Hey, MEC. This is our first Sunday where a good number of us will be meeting back together in person. However, I know that that's not the case for all of us. In fact, there's probably at least a third of you who are probably not going to be joining us since there are meeting size caps. And so I wanted to give you just this quick little message. This short message is called Summerwise because we're now in the thick of summer. And you might be thinking, okay, summer kind of feels a lot like spring did, because you were already at home doing things from home. But there was a shift, right? Because school has changed, and maybe some of those activities has changed. And so I wanted to get some of the wisdom from one of the best places, and that is the book of Proverbs in the Bible. And you'll see how this connects to what we're going to be doing with our summertime. Now, if you ever have opened up the book of the Proverbs, likely it's because someone told you, hey, the book of Proverbs, it's filled with practical advice and it's going to give you wisdom on how to live life. But then you opened it up, and for the first 9 chapters, you're like, who are these two ladies that they keep talking about? They keep warning against this one lady who will lead you into adultery, and is going to try to lure you in to do all sorts of evil things. And then there's this other lady who's calling out to you, and that's Lady Wisdom. And there's all of these encouragements to be like, be wise, don't be foolish, be wise, don't be foolish. It's almost like a 9 chapter buildup to get to the wisdom that is going to be shared in the book of Proverbs. So it's like the first 9 chapters, if you've ever opened up Proverbs, do not skip over it. But what I would say is, if you're like, okay, so where's this advice coming? You're not going to be getting it in the first 9 chapters. And so what we're going to do is dive right into the advice. And in fact, we're going to get into the first 5 pieces of advice that are offered to us in the book of Proverbs. And so there's all of this encouragement being like, choose wisdom. And so here are the first 5 pieces of wisdom that we're given. The Proverbs of Solomon. A wise son brings joy to his father, but a foolish son brings grief to his mother. Ill-gotten treasures have no lasting value, but righteousness delivers from death. The Lord does not let the righteous go hungry, but he thwarts the craving of the wicked. Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. So now you'll notice, if this is your first time reading Proverbs, you'll notice that each of these is written in these couplets. And the main indication of Hebrew poetry is not rhyming or meter, which is what we would probably equate. Like, oh, this is poetry is when it ends and it sounds the same, or when it goes, I don't know, what is anapestic? Da 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 da, following a certain rhythm. But Hebrew poetry, it's all about parallelism. And so there's a couple of types of parallelism, and these first 5 are all the same type of parallelism, where we have 2 opposite examples juxtaposed against one another. Or maybe not opposites, but 2 different things compared to one another that are supposed to illuminate each other by how different they are. Now, other places it'll be like a climactic one where there's a line and then the next line takes that same idea further. But these first 5 are saying, hey, wisdom does this, folly does this. And remember, contextually, we just jumped out of those 9 chapters of being like wisdom and folly, they're both calling for you. And so first 5 verses, wise people do this, foolish people do this. Wise, foolish, wise, foolish. Now, if you think about it, if you look at these things closely, what we're going to do is we're going to get 3 insights from these 5 proverbs, because verses 2 and 3 and verses 4 and 5 kind of talk about the same themes. And so I'm not going to talk about these very long, but I want to give you just a little bit of insight from them so that you can actually live this stuff out. So first, insight number 1 is this: a wise son brings joy to his father, but a foolish son brings grief to his mother. And last week we talked about how that Freudian fathers and parents, and how our parents shape us. And I think that it's tapping into that knowledge here, that right at the beginning of the book of Proverbs, when it talks about what wisdom and folly do, what wiseness and stupidness do, it brings joy to a parent, or it brings grief to a parent, depending on if you are wise or foolish, which then necessitates a definition of, okay, I want to make my parents happy. How do I do that? Well, you live wisely. You live with wisdom. And we've talked about this in previous sermons before, but wisdom is the Hebrew root chokmah, which means skill. And it's not like skill with a skill saw or skill at like cursive and calligraphy. It's which like the word can be applied to that. But in the book of Proverbs, we're talking about skill in living. So insight number one is you need to put at the front of your mind, I need to learn how to live. I think it's weird to think like, okay, we need to learn how to live because don't we just live? But those who are wise approach life with an angle thinking, I need to learn how to do this thing well. I need to learn how to do this life thing correctly. So, insight one, learn how to live. This summer, you have some interesting time set before you. Maybe you're still on quarantined or at home or whatever, but like you have been given a block of time where you can use and invest that block of time. And I would challenge you to use this time to learn how to do life and apply that in any way you want, but learn how to do life in some way, shape, or form. What's the next thing that you need to learn about living, and then do that thing. Insight number two comes from these. Ill-gotten treasures have no lasting value, but righteousness delivers from death. The Lord does not let the righteous go hungry, but he thwarts the craving of the wicked. And both of these have this similar theme where it's not necessarily wisdom that we're talking about here, but righteousness. Do you do the right thing, and do you desire the right thing? Right? Or do you desire bad things, and do you invest in getting things through, like ill-gotten treasures means like you got these things by not doing the right thing. And it makes me like, my first thought that came to my mind was Pirates of the Caribbean, which is like these pictures of wealth and wild living, like naturally like a 200-year-old version of wealth and wild living. But nevertheless, like the ride starts out with all of these pirates with swords in their backs, right? Like dead and rotting bones. Because what happens is when you pursue things, when you pursue your desires and you say, I'm going to do even wrong things to get what I want, Proverbs has a message for you. Don't do that. Instead, do the right thing. Desire the right thing. Even if it's harder, even if it's more difficult, even if maybe it's more annoying to go the hard way of doing things right, do the right thing. Because one, that delivers you from death, and two, the Lord honors that. And if you do the right thing and you desire the right thing, guess what? You'll be filled with that thing. You will not go hungry. And then the last insight we got is, lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. And so here, like, I think the message is easy, like, and it's simple. You've got time on your hands right now in summer. Don't use that time to be lazy. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a time and a place for rest and restoration. But use this time, like, and don't use that rest as an excuse to be lazy, to veg out, to do things that are totally unproductive, and totally don't actually build up who you are as a person, right? Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. And then this last verse is what made me think about like, oh, this is perfect for summer, is because he who gathers crops in summer is not like the main harvest time. Autumn is the main harvest time. But the prudent son, the wise, the shrewd, the intelligent son uses summertime, even though it's not normal harvest time, to get to work on things and get a jump on like what's coming up in the next season. And so don't waste this time that you have before you. And then even further, I think that maybe what it does is it rescues us from the habits of then even being lazy when harvest time is here, being lazy when school does get kicked into gear again, when our busy schedules pick up, and then we're just in the mode of being lazy. And so learn how to live, desire and do the right thing, and don't be lazy. And so here's my challenge for you. I dare you guys to read Proverbs. And when I say that, I don't mean read the whole book. What I mean is, I dare you to read a proverb, maybe a handful of proverbs, and pick that proverb and live it out. Learn how to live, practice these things, and use your time wisely this summer. And I think things will go pretty well for you. Have a great Sunday, everyone. Bye bye.